Café and Networking Podcast promotes successful business experts throughout the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, known as the King of Networking, connecting people from my podcast studio in Brazil. Today we talk with Denise Moore Revel, and she's joining us from Washington, D.C. Dr. Denise Moore Revel, a CEO, founder, and award-nominated best-selling author, speaker, and personal development coach. She empowers women, founded the Own Your Amazing movement as an extension of the message of finding your own voice and living your worth out loud. So Denise, what do you think are the biggest roadblocks for women in today's world?
Oh, wow. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me. And it's so many, but I'll just start with maybe a few roadblocks, right? So the main thing is a lot of times we don't know who we are. So I talk a lot about the power of identity. And I start there with my clients, like, who are you? And to me, that's one of the biggest roadblocks for many women and men too, but for people to understand who they really are and to really understand that they have the power to create the life that they want, right, instead of the life that just had been given to them. So one is knowing who you are. The second one is to really silence all the voices that are in the world telling you who you're not.
Or who you should be, right?
Who you should be, yes. So a lot of times we have so many missed messages as women as to how we should look, how we should talk, what we should wear, all these things. And we get kind of confused about, again, who we really are. And so some other roadblocks, but I just want to say those are the top two for me, the power of identity and learning to silence all the different voices and learn to hear the power of your own voice.
Well, that's important because really many of us, we underestimate our own voice. Many people don't really hear themselves, do they?
No, they do not. Not even on a physical standpoint. So for years, I've been a speech language pathologist. So my job is to actually hear people's voices, you know? Right. And in that, I've come to discover that every person has a different voice. Right. Your voice is not like my voice. My voice is not like anybody's voice on the planet. And so we can get that on a physical level. We can also get that on a more, spiritual level in the sense of how we live our lives out loud. That's the part I talk about. How are you showing up? How are you living out loud? And to know that it is uniquely you. Your voice, your physical voice, and your lived experiences are uniquely your voice. So you have to learn to really tune into that.
Well, you brought us to an interesting point because one of the things I defend with this podcast is that we generate voice searchable content. So what you're saying, if I hear you correctly, our voice identity is unique to these search engine robots.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So they know it's us talking right now.
They know it's us. You know, I have a funny story I tell people, like, if you're going to rob a bank, make sure you cover your face, right? But also don't say a word because you can be identified by your voice because it's just that unique. No one else has your voice.
And I think that's one of the things that we really underestimate of how we sound. Because we may be speakers and we do that, but even in general conversation of presenting yourself as a person, we don't value that.
Right. And in turn, we don't value, again, our lived experiences, how we show up in the world. We discount our stories. We discount the experiences we're going through. We don't see the value in it. But I tell people, you are for someone. And so people need to hear your story, to hear how you've overcome, hear the things you've gone through, because it can help someone. But a lot of times our voices are silent. You know, I grew up in a time where children were supposed to be seen, but not heard.
Well, I was there, Ty. I can understand. Okay. I was there myself, right?
So understand what that means to a person. Like, I can see you, but I don't need to hear you.
Right.
But our voices are powerful. It's our story. It's how we show up in the world. And when we've been taught to silence that, that's where you find a lot of people playing small, not really living up to their potential because they've been told, no, be quiet. Don't tell your story. Don't tell your perspective. It's not of value. But I am here to tell people, no, you are amazing, and people need to hear your voice and your story.
And the pandemic actually brought us all together globally like that because everything became remote. Many things became just voice, even though we talk of Zoom and everything else. But most people, myself, taking part in seminars or whatever, we just heard people. And that gets back to your point of a virtual, a voice identity. Some voices stood out more than others, and we weren't seeing the person.
Right. And think about that, even just, again, we're talking physical voice, but think about it more deeply than that. How are you standing out in your own life? How are you standing out in your community, your family? Are your voice being heard on those things that matter to you as a person? That's the point. It's like, get clear who you are and then go out and share your voice, your life, your experience, whoever you are with the world, because the world needs that.
Well, what you're saying is each part of that is part of your identity. It's not one thing. It's all things together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so again, it goes back to the first question, like what's the block? And again, it's about getting clear about who you are so that you can have a powerful voice in the world.
And to that point too, that there are so many roadblocks placed in front of us. I'm saying not only women, obviously there are more because the world thinks that women should be in a certain way. Men, the same thing. All these things just come out and say, and to that point you said, we want to see you, want to hear you. But that's a different world today. So to the personal branding, to the professional development, that's the key today.
Absolutely. It's like, what's your voice? What's your brand? How are you showing up in the world? What are you saying? How are you presenting yourself to the world? It's very important. But again, I find so many women are not doing that in a powerful way. They're not showing up authentically. We hear that word a lot, right? You need to be your authentic self. But a lot of people are struggling with that because, again, they listen to so many outside voices that they have not taken the time to hear their own. To say, well, what is important to me? What do I value? How do I define success? How do I define work-life balance? All those questions we need to ask ourselves and then say, what is the voice telling me about these things? Not what is everyone else telling me, but what am I telling myself about it?
So now your amazing group that you've created, it's really a focal group for women to share these stories amongst themselves.
Not just to share your story, but again, for help. My job is to help them to give themselves permission to own they are amazing, to own their voice, to know that you have power in your voice. So a lot of times when I'm speaking, to women's group, it's about the power of your voice. Like, you have a voice, you have a unique voice, and your voice matters. That's what I have to tell them all the time. You have a voice. Because we've been silenced, remember? Be seen, but not heard.
Well, we've been forced to that. And even today, when we see, and you see the comparison of CEOs and directors corporate-wide, there are few women. If they do use their voice, they're considered outspoken. Men aren't considered outspoken, but women, they say, oh, she's outspoken, but she's supposed to speak.
Yes. And then the whole thing about having a unique voice, again, physically, we have a unique voice, right? But again, our lived experiences.
Right.
The things I've gone through is different from what you've gone through. And so, but if I don't share that, if I don't share my story, my experiences, my lessons learned, how would other women like me learn those lessons unless I tell my story? And then my story matters. We have to understand what we have is of value to someone. I always say, I'm not for everyone, but I am for someone. And for those people
that's
who
true.
are
There are 8 billion people out there.
Yes.
8 billion people.
Yes. And we need to share who we are.
That's true. And I agree with you. And to that point, again, I think it's learning how to do that. It's really learning to release yourself. Is the first one. We're here today podcasting, which has become the thing, right? Of using our voices. This is an audio podcast. We are sharing our voices. But what I learned in this journey, there are a number of factors. How can you create trust, which is the essence of what we're talking about, is showing how authentic you are. And that authenticity comes through a voice.
And it's understanding your voice. Own your amazing. Again, it says own your amazing. And I encourage women, like, I can't own it for you, and you can't own it for me. And so I
think I'm amazing, but when I say that to my wife, she says, "There you go again," right? But
I love it. Yes, own that you are amazing.
We got to tell people if they feel it, right? Share the feeling.
Exactly.
Well, Dr. Denise, I want to thank you. It's been enjoyable. But how can our audience find you? How can they hear more from you?
They can go to my website. It's ownyouramazingnnow.com. Again, ownyouramazingnnow.com.
Not later. Not later.
Right? Own it now. And so you can really discover who you are. You can follow me on Facebook at Dr. Denise Own Your Amazing. My book is on Amazon. You can get that. And it tells my story. Remember, it tells about my journey to owning my amazing. So I encourage people to get the book, to follow me on Facebook, to go to the website to learn more about the community, and come and join the movement. It's not just a business, it's a movement. I'm trying to move people from where they are and to amazing, from good to better to amazing. Right. That's what we're about.
No, and you bring to that, you are a professional therapist, so you're bringing structured professional help to the party.
Absolutely.
Very good. Dr. Denise, thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
And for our listeners, again, you can find her at ownyouramazingnnow.com. And it is Denise Moore Revel, DeniseMoore, and the last name is Revel. And the book is on Amazon. Café and Networking is brought to us by Focus Semi Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information at focusmi.com. Thanks for listening until the next time here at Café and Networking Podcast.